Welcome to the Imaginarium, everybody. I'm Scott Colbert, and I'm your host, and some of you may know me from the Supernauts, and if you're wondering if I'm going to be changing over to simply this show, the answer is no. I'll always be on the Supernauts, and this is simply a side podcast that I've been wanting to do for a while. And the Imaginarium is a show about creativity. It's about art and artists. And in the coming weeks, I hope to have writers, musicians, poets, filmmakers, actors, comedians, and maybe even a mime. Or scratch that, no mimes. There's no real format to Imaginarium. It's other than the free flow of ideas. And for the first guest, I'm pleased to introduce Alec Belle. Alec is the author of Before I Break, as well as the upcoming Forbidden Darkness Chronicles, and he's also an online high school student. So welcome to the show, Alec.
Hello.
All right, well, for those of the people in the audience who may not know you, why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Okay, well, as you said, I'm an online high school student. I started doing online high school in my 10th grade year because I decided that I wanted to be able to focus more on my writing because I wanted to get a book published. So I I decided, okay, well, I'm going to do online school, and about a few months into online school, I started writing Before I Break.
Okay, well, why don't you tell us a little bit of the history of Before I Break? Uh, when did you start writing it?
I came up with the idea when I was still in public high school. I was sitting in Spanish class one day, and I started wondering what it would be like to have a homophobic straight guy and a gay guy become friends accidentally, like they didn't know that secret about the other. And so when I first came up with the idea, I went to my mom and I told her that, this was the idea that I had. Um, but I told her that I wanted to write it from the straight guy's perspective instead of the gay guy's perspective. And my mom thought it was a really good idea. She told me right away, she said, "You need to write this book." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to or not." She's like, "No, I don't want you to write this book. You need to write this book." So I started, at the time, all I had was kind of a basic idea. And then I started working on like the actual plot and started trying to figure out like characters that would kind of fill the roles. And then within a couple months, I had kind of an outline, but I didn't really do too much of an outline. I wanted a majority of the middle to kind of take place on its own, but I had kind of an idea for the beginning, and I knew exactly how the book was going to end. Like I said, the stuff in the middle, though, was kind of that all happened while I was writing. I kind of let the characters take me on the journey as long as it led to the ending that was originally planned.
So, was a lot of what you've written in Before I Break based on personal experience that you went through while you were still in public school?
Yeah, a lot of what was written in Before I Break about the gay character. His name is Avery Branson, and I guess he's kind of like an offspring of me. There's a there are a few differences between in him, but for the most part, I would say that he's kind of like me. Originally, when I came up with the idea, I wanted to have him tell the story because I felt like it would be easier for me to be able to write the story if he was kind of like me. But then, I kind of decided, okay, I didn't want to go that route because I felt like he wasn't the right person to be able to tell the story that I was trying to tell. So I ended up switching it to Cyril, the straight character.
How difficult was it for you to get into the head of a homophobic character and actually tell the story from his point of view? Because for most of the book, and I've read it, and I've told you on Facebook, and I even post a review on Amazon. it's probably one of the best young adult novels I've read in a very, very long time. And
Yeah,
and I think the fact that you're 17 and that you wrote something with this much substance is absolutely incredible. And a lot of that has to do with being able to take a character who, as I said, is fairly unlikable for most of the book, but make people stay with it. How were you able to do that?
I don't know. I think well, one, it was kind of hard to get into his head at first because a lot of Cyril is kind of like a he's kind of like he's a mix of different people that I've had experiences with. So he has certain parts of different people that I am no longer friends with, unfortunately, because of, my sexuality. But it really was it really was difficult. And like you said, for a majority of the book, he's not likable. Even for me at the very beginning, I was like, oh my God, I really don't like this guy. I was like, why am I writing this book? But I think, and like you said, I've actually gotten a lot of feedback from people that despite not liking him, they've still stuck with the story and they've still read it. I don't know how I did it because for me, when I read books, if I don't like the main character, it's kind of difficult for me to get through it. But for some reason, I felt like it was kind of different. I feel like, and like you asked me why I wrote it in past tense instead of present tense, and I think that's it. It was a little bit easier to do it that way because you were you were aware it would be easier to be aware of the fact that he was going to change. Like at the in the prologue, he basically says that, throughout the book he was the bad guy. And that kind of gives the reader, I think, the idea that he is going to change towards the end of the book, which is why people have been able to stick with it. I don't know if that's exactly the case, but that's just kind of my personal opinion on it.
I know sometimes when books are written in that particular style, the first person, past tense, it kind of deflates some of the drama that may come afterwards because you already know that they've made it through whatever their issue is.
Yeah,
But in this case, it really does seem to work because you create a, a background of characters, his friends and everybody else, that really kind of propel the story. And I think it's those, like his girlfriend and to a certain extent his best friend, um, really just kind of push
yeah,
everything forward. So I think it does work, and there's a lot of it's a difficult balancing act, and I think you did it pretty well.
yeah. Well, thank you.
So you finished the book, and you decided to self-publish it. Why was that?
Well, originally I was going to get it traditionally published because just like every other author, I think that's out there. I finished the book and I was like, yes, this is a great book. Everybody's gonna love it, and agents gonna find it, and they're gonna tell me how great and wonderful I am, and then it's gonna get published. Yeah, well, that wasn't the case, obviously. Um, I I queried about, I'd say, 200 agents. I went onto Agent Query and literally emailed every single agent that was possibly on the website that was within the genre that I was trying to write. And some of them I didn't hear back from. Others I simply got the response of no. That's all they sent was no. Or and of course, then you get the ones that are totally scripted that are like, we're sorry to inform you, but um, we just don't feel like it's a good fit for us. So yeah, good luck. And I was like, okay, well, since none of the agents that I had found. And like I said, I literally queried all of these agents on Agent Query. So I was like, okay. So now that I've basically ruled out all my options when it comes to agents because clearly none of them wanted the story, I started talking to my friend Nikki Ray, who's also an indie author, and I asked her what company she used. She told me that she used CreateSpace. Um, and so I said, okay, well, maybe I should try this. So I started looking into it, um, and I found out that CreateSpace was free. Um, So that was good. The only thing that I would have to pay for was a cover and stuff. But other than that, CreateSpace was free to publish. So because they were a print on demand. So I said, okay, I think I'm going to try this. So basically, she guided me through the entire process of putting my book up on CreateSpace, and that was kind of a hassle because at the time when I actually decided to self-publish, I actually hadn't entirely finished the book. I think I only had a couple chapters left. So I actually had to wait till I finished the book and then I had to go through and edit it and stuff. So it actually took about a month or two before I was even able to get it onto CreateSpace. But and like I said, during that time, I was still kind of hoping that I would get a response from an agent because usually most say that they'll respond within 6 to 8 weeks. And yeah, even after I made the decision to self-publish, I was still getting rejection emails. So that wasn't fun, but I kind of knew at the time that I had made the right decision.
And you also released it as an ebook as well.
Yes, I did.
And I know you don't like ebooks, but you decided to do it as an ebook anyway. And is there a little bit of a disappointment that the ebooks tend to sell more than the paperbacks?
Yeah, I would I would say so, mostly because I am like you said, I don't personally like ebooks, but I know that other people like ebooks. So if, you know, to me an ebook is still a book. To me it's just my personal opinion that I prefer physical copies. So I'm not going to make everybody else who prefers ebooks suffer when I'm trying to get readers. So I decided that I decided that I was going to do an ebook as well. But yes, most of my sales come from ebooks. Because on Kindle they had the free ebook deal that you could do for like 5 days, and I did that when the book came out, and I would say over 200 people got the book during the time period of the free ebook. So I was kind of happy about that because to me, I was like, that's 200 people who are probably going to read it. But of course, at the time, I still had my hopes up. I was like, they're probably going to read it and they're going to review it and everything's going to be great and dandy. Well, yeah, I didn't get any reviews. I didn't get any feedback. I didn't get anything. But to me, I was still happy that at least 200 people were interested enough in my book to be able to try it out.
There's absolutely nothing more depressing for a writer than not being able to get feedback on their book. I know that from my own personal experience with Barbed Wire Kisses. It's You really have to have a tough skin to be able to not only be a writer, but to be able to not only handle bad reviews, but handle no reviews at all as well.
I would agree with that. I think that and over time I think I have, because my books are up on Goodreads too. And for before I break, I think about only two of the reviews are from people that I don't know personally. And the rest of them are from people that I know personally. But I told everybody, I said, be completely honest with me. Because if you don't like the book, I don't want you to give it a 5 stars simply because you know me. So that's kind of I feel like that's kind of a problem too, is that a lot of people tend to, if you go on and my book has maintained an average of 5 stars since it came out, about 2 months ago, and I think that to people is actually kind of a turn off, because when you go on and all you see is 5 stars, again, I'm not complaining. I mean, if people want to give it 5 stars, then go ahead. ahead. But I think that that kind of turns people off, because then you go, well, how many of these reviews are actually honest reviews and aren't because they're related to them or because they're friends? So I think that that's kind of a problem too. I would prefer more reviews from people that I don't know personally.
Yeah, those are always tough to get. And even with my book, it's been out almost 2 years now as an ebook, and it's only been recently that I started getting more reviews for it. I went almost a year before I started getting other reviews for it, and those have only happened since I started doing the other podcast. So it's certainly a slow process. Having said that, looking back on your book now, is there anything different that you would have done differently with it? Or are you
I
completely happy with it?
at the time, and I think this goes for most authors. I think that there's usually at least one thing that they would go back and change. But that's because I think, people grow as writers, and you can kind of see after it comes out, you can kind of see, oh, well, maybe I should have done this. I, I I personally think that maybe I should have fleshed it out a little bit more, because it is a short book. Um, the the ebook, I think, is about 180 pages, single spaced, I think. So it's fairly short. It only takes about a couple hours to read for most people, and I think that probably should have, you know maybe fleshed it out a little bit more. But to me, I didn't want to make the story seem like it was dragging out. So, all the stuff in the middle, while it was kind of important, I didn't, when I was talking to my aunt Michelle, and I kind of consider her like my agent, even though she's not, because at each book I write, I send her chapter by chapter, um, and she gives me feedback. She's been really great. And so, but when I was at I would say I was about 2/3 of the way through the book, and I said, I don't know what else to do. I said, I feel like the end needs to happen right now, and I don't feel like there's any more to the story that I can add. But I was like, but I feel like the book is too short. So what do I do? And she basically just told me, she said, go with what you feel. If you feel like the end needs to happen right now, then have the end happen right now. So I took her advice and I did it. And I think the end kind of came at a good time, but I still, I wish that there had kind of been more story to tell. But even looking back on it now, I don't really think there was.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to judge that sometimes, and I think it's probably the perfect size for a young adult novel. Um, there's a lot that happens in it, and there's a lot to think about, and I think that probably compensates for it being novella length. And
Yes.
I prefer novella length myself. The older I get, the less patience I have with long-winded series. I know you like series books, uh,
Yes.
but when I have to wait for George R. R. Martin to, you know, for years for him to come out with another book in the Game of Thrones stuff, I have a hard time dealing with that anymore.
Well, and I think a part of the problem with series as well, especially if you go the traditional way, a lot of times, I've I've noticed this a lot, is that it does take a lot longer for a traditionally published book to come out than a self-published book. For me, my upcoming series, the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles, as I've said before, it's going to have 8 books. All the titles are chosen. Each plot for the book has been, written out. I know exactly where it's going to go. And my plan is to release the first 3 or 4 books next year. So really, in all reality, the series is only going to go on for about 2.5 years, maybe. Um, So it's not like people are going to have to wait 8 years because they're waiting, or longer because they're waiting a year or longer for each book to come out, which to me is one of the reasons why I actually prefer self-publishing, because I can release it when I want, and I can release as many books a year as I want. And I think that that's a good thing, especially for readers who really don't want to wait an entire year or longer for each book to come out, especially in a series that is as long as mine is.
Okay. Well, before we get into the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles, let's talk a little bit about your Wattpad series, Masquerade.
Yes. My my Wattpad series, yeah, it's called Masquerade, and it's kind of like it, and a lot of people have told me that it has a lot of similarities to the ABC Family show Pretty Little Liars, which is my favorite show, by the way. Um, and I would agree with that. I think it does have a lot of similarities. But you know, it and the series is still, I update on Mondays and Wednesday, or not Mondays and Wednesdays, Mondays and Thursdays is when I update. Um, and I add a new part each day, and so it's still in the very beginning um of the series. There's only 8 parts out so far, but it's definitely going to be a lot longer. And there is kind of a plot difference between Pretty Little Liars and Masquerade, um, and that will eventually, by the 10th part, which is going to be out next Monday, people will kind of start to see the difference between the shows. So or the show and the series that I'm writing, people will start to see the difference in there. There is an underlying kind of message to the Masquerade series, but I'm not going to get into that yet because, again, I'm still at the very beginning, and if I do, it kind of spoils some things that are going to happen later. So, but people will start to see that they're kind of everything I write, even if it's fiction, um, there usually is a message, like a real life message behind it, and I feel like Masquerade's a very good series because you know people will get to people will kind of get to see the message that I'm trying to give off in a bit of a different light.
Would you consider it Pretty Little Liars fan fiction?
No, I the whole plot, they're all the characters I've come up with myself. Um, and I guess kind of in the beginning, I guess people can kind of say that it was fan fiction because I did kind of, you know, there's it's basically, about this group of high school students, and they're getting stalked and harassed by an anonymous person. And I would say that that's really the only similarities between the show and the series. Um, and and pretty soon, the big difference between Pretty Little Liars and Masquerade is that, in Masquerade, the main enemy, who is Masquerade, um, gets revealed very early on. There's not, Pretty Little Liars, we're still in season 5, and nobody knows who this anonymous person is that's stalking and harassing these girls. But in my series, Masquerade, who is kind of the equivalent of A from Pretty Little Liars, gets revealed kind of very early on, and again, it has to do with the message that I'm trying to give off.
And what message is that?
There's the only thing that I will say, so it doesn't spoil too much, is that there the main message has to do with diversity. The series takes place, in a high school, and each of the characters, there's so many differences between them. One of the main characters, and this isn't a spoiler because pretty much in the first part, he's gay. He's secretly gay, but he is kind of dealing with like an internal problem, and you know he's just worried because he doesn't know what other people are going to think. So you know and the main message is kind of the lack of acceptance, I think, that there tends to be in high school for different people. um the kind of idea for masquerade is that there are hateful people in the world that will dislike you for the color of your skin or your sexuality or your religion or whatever it is. you know and that's kind of all I can say for right now, until it gets further into the series. But that's kind of the main message so far.
In comparison to the stuff that you've written with the characters coming out, how much of that was your experience of your own coming out?
That depends. Are we talking about Masquerade or my book? Because I'd say that there is a difference in, and people will notice that with everything I write there is a gay character, whether they're a main character or whether they're a, I feel like there's an inclusion factor that kind of needs to be done. And if you have all straight characters, I just think that it's kind of unrealistic. So but that's kind of a side note. Everything I write is going to at least have um one gay character in it somewhere, whether it be a main character or a minor character or somebody's sibling. I feel like that's something that needs to be.
Let's kind of segue into Forbidden Darkness Chronicles. Is this in a similar vein as Before I Break and Masquerade, or is this something totally different?
It's something totally different. Well, so far I've been kind of writing in four different genres my entire life. I've written contemporary young adult fiction, which is what Before I Break was. Then I've written, mystery stuff, which is what Masquerade is. And then I've also written paranormal stuff, which is what the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles is. The Forbidden Darkness Chronicles is a paranormal, I'd say more urban than romance, um, young adult series.
And that's going to start coming out in January, right?
Yes, the first book is called Forbidden Darkness, and the ebook is available January 9th. As far as the paperbacks, I think that they will be available by then too, but depending on sometimes things get kind of messed up, and sometimes the paperbacks come out a little bit later. Like for Before I Break, the release date for the ebook was the 6th, but the paperback is the 7th. Technically, technically the book wasn't supposed to be out until the 19th, but that's a whole that was a whole another story. Kind of my book accidentally kind of got released, and so I kind of just stuck with it and was like, okay. But yes, the first book does come out January 9th.
That can be pre-ordered, right?
Yes, the first book in the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles can be pre-ordered. The ebooks can be pre-ordered. Unfortunately, the paperbacks can't, but the ebooks can.
Okay. And I understand that you have a GoFundMe for the Before Darkness Chronicles. So why don't you pimp that out a little bit?
Yes, I started in September. I had started a GoFundMe for Before I Break, and it kind of turned out successfully. So I decided that I was going to do it again for the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles. And because unfortunately, one of the cons of self-publishing is that I have to have all of the money myself, to be able to pay, for the cover designs, to pay for professional editing if I want to get it, professionally edited. And so I think that kind of all of the money that gets donated to the GoFundMe can, or not can, it will be going towards my book. So if I go over my goal for my GoFundMe, the money will go towards the second book, or pretty much the GoFundMe that I have right now was set originally for the first book, but any money that's left over, I'm not going to take it and use it for my own personal. I'm not going to go and buy a whole bunch of books for myself to read. I'm not going to go do that. All of the money that gets donated to the GoFundMe will be going toward my writing in some way, whether it's marketing or whether it's editing or whether it's paying for cover designs. So, donating would be really helpful. Yeah, even if it's just $1, if everybody were to donate $1, I would be rich. So really, really, even if that, I don't care if it's $1 or more. It's any little bit helps.
But don't be cheap. Donate 5, 10, 20 bucks, whatever you can.
Yes.
Because he deserves it. So I understand you're starting something called the Festival of Scribes on Facebook.
Yes. It was an idea that I got. I participate in a lot of groups on Facebook, like writers groups. But a part of the problem that I think that there tends to be with writers groups is that all the people in the groups are writers. So we're all posting our books, but everybody in the groups kind of tends to be more worried about their book. So they're posting about their book, I'm posting about my book, but neither one of us is really paying attention to the other's books because we're trying to personally get readers. I think that I kind of noticed a flaw with the groups. I think that they're helpful sometimes because there is an occasional person who's in the groups that is a reader and is in the groups because they're looking for indie books to read. But for the most part, it's mostly just other authors, and I didn't really like that. So I wanted to come up with an event that was that would be an online event where indie authors could go and they could advertise their books to readers. Like I said, this is the first time I'm doing anything like this, so hopefully there is some success with it. Even if it just gets a couple readers, that would be helpful. But so I started speaking with other indie authors that I've had on my page. And each of us was kind of like assigned a day. So throughout the week, the online event will take place on Facebook from December 1st through December 5th. If you join the event, you do get notifications when somebody posts in the event. So you would get notified, if one of the authors, starts doing a Q&A or something like that. But so throughout the week, the authors can pretty much promote their books all week long, but then each day there is a specific author who's going to, be doing like their own personal stuff, whether they're doing a Q&A or whether they're doing a giveaway. As of right now, we only have one indie author per day, which I think is good. If there were other indie authors that said like, hey, I want to join, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But as of right now, there is only one author per day that's going to be doing something. So there's 5 authors that are going to be doing the Festival of Scribes.
And what day will you be doing it?
I am doing it on the 3rd, I think, of December. Let me double check, but I believe that I am doing it on the 3rd. Yeah, I'm doing it on the 3rd. I wanted to do the middle of the week. I will be doing a few ebook giveaways of Before I Break, and I'll also be doing an ebook giveaway of the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles, or the first book in the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles. So if you want a chance to win Before I Break or Forbidden Darkness, then I recommend joining the event and make sure that you're online for the 3rd, at least for some parts of the day. Because like I said, I'll be doing about 3 ebook giveaways for each. So I'll be doing 3 ebook giveaways for Before I Break, and I'll be doing 3 for Forbidden Darkness.
That's awesome. And full disclosure, I'm one of the indie authors that's participating, and I'll be on Thursday.
Yeah.
I figured I would get that in there too.
Yes, you are going to be there as well.
Do you have any problems with other writers taking you seriously because of your age?
Yeah, I've yeah, it's been kind of a problem. One of the things that it was actually kind of funny because just a few weeks ago I went and I did a book signing at an LGBT group here in Massachusetts, and I I brought a whole box of my books to sell. Of course, I didn't think I was going to sell any. Come to find out, I sold every single copy I had. But um, and I went and I walked in with my box of books, and the lady who I had been talking to through email was like, "Hi, can I help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm here for the book signing or whatever." And she's like, "Oh yeah, the author will be here in a minute." And I was like, um, I am the author. And she kind of looked at me like she was kind of confused, and she was like, "Oh." So she so then I went in, and we were walking through and we were going to go put my stuff down. And then this other lady was like, "Oh, what did you bring for us?" And I was like, "Oh, my books." And she was like, "Wait, you're Alec Belle?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Huh, you're younger than I thought." And so yeah, I tend to get that a lot. People get really confused because they think I'm a fan of my books, and then come to find out I'm the author. So I think they're a little bit more Im I think they're impressed in a sense at my age. But then I think it also makes them a little bit hesitant because they're like, okay, this 17-year-old wrote a book, like it's probably gonna be terrible. So I think that there is some hesitation, but I think once they read it, they they realize like, oh, he wrote a pretty good book. So um, and I've had a few people who've read my book and didn't realize that I was 17, and then found out that I was 17 and were shocked themselves. I do think the agents, I think when agents realized that I was 17, I think that was kind of a problem. Um, I think that was probably why I got a lot of the rejections that I did, but it could have just been because they thought the story sucked. But I think that that was kind of a turnoff for agents. That I was still in high school, and I think that they kind of doubted my ability and didn't even want to take the chance to check it out before they said no.
Well, I think you did a good enough job on your own with it, and I have no doubt you'll probably have future success with it because, as I've said, it's a fantastic book, and it's the kind of book I really wish that I'd had when I was your age. Uh,
Yeah.
I didn't. All I had was Judy Blume and Paul Zundel. Not that there's anything wrong with Paul Zundel. I mean, The Pigman was one of my favorite books growing up, but it's a far cry from the type of material that you're working with. And
That's
and it sounds like you have a lot of support from your family.
yeah, I do. I that's kind of, you know, it took a long time to get the support from my family that I think I needed. My Aunt Michelle, she's always been cool with it. You know, for the most part, yeah, I think my family and I now are just like, we're all super close, and they try to help me out with my writing as much as possible, no matter what the topic is, because I think that they don't have a single doubt in their minds that I'm gonna make it someday. It could take a long time, but I think that one day I am going to be a successful author, hopefully.
I have no doubt that you will be, and I look forward to following you on your journey. And as we wrap this up, is there anything else that you want us to know about that we haven't touched?
Um, the only other thing that I would say is that the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles, my 8 book paranormal series, while it is a paranormal series, there there is a lot of um there's a lot of real life stuff kind of woven, weaved, woven. I don't know. I don't know what the word would be for that, but there's a lot of real life stuff in it as well, just like Before I Break did, and just like Masquerade does. With everything I write, I do try to incorporate, even though the Forbidden Darkness Chronicles, you're like, okay, this would never happen because there's no such thing as monster hunters and stuff like that, and but there is kind of a connection there because there are characters in the series that go through a lot of personal things as well, such as self-harm, dealing with sexuality, stuff like that. So that stuff is also incorporated in there as well. So hopefully people will feel more connected with the characters that way. And that was kind of the plan. So hopefully it works out.
Well, I know I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I want to thank you for coming on to the show and being my first guest. It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed having you on.
All right, yeah, yeah, it was kind of fun.
For those who haven't listened to the Supernauts, the other show that I co-host with Slate Fist Crunch and RJD, please give that a listen at thesupernauts.com. And we have a contest going on there as well, where if you tell us what your favorite episode of the Supernauts is, you have a chance to win everything that I've ever written in my entire life, plus an audiobook. So head on over to the website, listen to some of the episodes, and enter the contest, and you can win. And that's going to be open until midnight on Thanksgiving. And join us next time when we have Wade Radford on, and he was a very popular guest on the Supernauts, and I'm very lucky and pleased to have him come back on to Imaginarium. And I want to thank everybody for listening, and tune in next time.